Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Before we get to today's great guest, quick thing on my website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. It's brand new. There's a lot of stuff. I have a new book out, Finding Your Summit, same name as the podcast. Number one debuted on Amazon, which is pretty cool. But it also talks about peaks and valleys, not just about all the peaks and the shiny things that are out there, which is cool. That's number one. Number two, we are having an event, the Seven Summits Summit.com. Go to my website. You can find that under events. It's going to be in September, and it's all about this fall, we rise. It's going to be really cool. I've got amazing speakers coming to that. We're going to climb, we're going to get after it. And finally, I am on the speaking circuit, and I'm out there doing a variety of different keynotes around the country, heading out to Austin this weekend. So if you want me to come in and fire up your audience with leadership, mindset, resilience, all those great things, reach out to me. Okay. On that note, let's dive into it. Today, I've got a really interesting guy, Dov Baron. Dov, how you doing?
Good, mate. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
First of all, I love your name. I don't know if you like paid for that and came up, rebranding of yourself. It's a great.
Dov, no, Dov is an ancient name. So people will mistake it and put an E on the end. That's not my name. I don't have any wings. It's Dov. It's a Hebrew name actually. And it means bear.
I love it. I love when I have encounters with the bear, right? And
That's
we
it,
are
mate.
we are right here, right now. Well, look at I'm in Sun Valley, Idaho. I'm originally from Seattle. I do believe you're in the Great Province, if that's how you say it, Vancouver, BC,
Yep.
which is very much and very similar to Seattle, just across the border for us, 3 hours away. I've been there many different times, but you bring something I think a little bit different, and today. Uh, I think it's really powerful in terms of a lot of things that a lot of people are going through. The world is in complete chaos right now, thanks in part a lot to the U.S. And that is what it is. And we're not going to make this political, but I think when you and I had a quick chat a while ago, and I think it's surrounded. I don't know if this is the way that you're going to refer to it, and that's really this emotional source code. EQ, that's another thing that people, it's not that. Okay,
It's not
good.
EQ,
So,
but it is emotional source code.
yeah, so I want to talk about that because
Sure.
it's really interesting because I think this is like, if you start up at the surface with that, and then there's this big rabbit hole that we can go down. So let's just start off by talking about what is the emotional source code as you see it.
So the emotional source code for me comes out of about 40 years of work in this area. As you and I talked about, I'm a polymath, so I've taken this in all kinds of weird and wonderful directions. And it really started off with me being very dissatisfied with the solutions that were offered. As a polymath, I've studied psychology, I've studied quantum physics, neuroscience, biohacking, a bunch of other things. And what I found was every explanation of the psychology of who we are and how we are didn't complete. It was something missing. And even emotional intelligence, which I'm a big fan of, is incomplete. So to just make the distinction for a minute, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your own feelings, recognize the feelings of others, and potentially change the room by managing people's feelings.
Mhm.
That's not emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is vastly different. That comes from experience and emotional intelligence, which creates wisdom. That's emotional maturity. Different again. Emotional source code is the framework in which you're built. So just go from the top to the bottom just to make it easy for everybody to grasp. Most of us have had a behavior in our lives where we've gone, that's kind of shitty behavior. I want to change that. Okay. So, you might be doing great over here, but in this area, so you come and you find a coach or a therapist or whatever, I need to change the behavior. And they do some behavioral change, X work with you. Cognitive behavioral therapy is great. You have some results. It's wonderful, but it wears off really fast. And you go, why did it not stick? Well, because the behaviors are driven by your beliefs and values. Oh, right. I got to do the beliefs work. I got to do my values work. Yeah. So you do that beliefs work. Okay. I need to change these beliefs. But why don't these beliefs stay changed? What's going on? Because your beliefs are held in place by your identity.
Hmm.
Your identity is the number one most addictive thing in your neurosystem. Your brain is always driven to qualify, verify, and validate your identity. Your identity is not true, it's the truth you've made up. And you did that in order to survive, which is the layer below it, which is called the anatomy of meaning. The anatomy of meaning is a meaning you gave things in your formative years in order to understand how to survive this lunatic asylum called your childhood, right? Not because you had shitty parents, although you might have had, but because it's crazy, right? You're a kid, you're trying to work things out. And that original environment is called your emotional source code. That's where you were. Now you can have a brother or sister, a twin, who will have grow up completely different than you. Why? They had exactly the same environment. So what changed? The anatomy of meaning. They gave to this circumstance, to this situation, how they had to work it out. They then designed an identity. Okay, this is who I have to be in order to survive this environment. This is who I have to be. And if I'm going to be this, I got to have a set of values and a set of beliefs unconsciously developed, and that will generate a set of behaviors. So that's the 5 levels of the emotional source code, down and up.
So there's a lot to unpack
Really?
there. Yeah, there is. But I want to go to the back up the top. And so you went down through the five. And so there's essentially what I got out of that was that there's this layer upon layer that you keep peeling back and then, presto. And so do people come to you, right, as an expert in this to help them like unravel all this junk that they've had over the years? Because at the end of the day, if we have this certain source code, that doesn't mean that we have to live with that, right? We can take a right-hand turn and we can change, how we see the world. And a lot of it is through experience and like whatever is working or not working for certain people, you get to a certain point, a threshold where you just got to go, this ain't working. It's not working in my relationships, my work, my kids, everything else. So something's got to change. Is that how you help others through
My
this?
clients tend to come to me as very highly successful people. They might be in politics, they might be in arts, entertainment, very high level business. They're very successful. They are living at the top of Success Mountain as far as everybody's concerned.
Yeah.
But they've climbed that peak and they're like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
I'm standing on top of my personal Everest, and how come it felt great for about 4 seconds?
Yeah.
How come something's still missing? What is it that's missing? And so what most people do is at that point is they then try and change some behaviors and they try and change some beliefs, but it doesn't work. And they know it doesn't work. Now, what happens in fairness for most people is they just go, is something wrong with me? I don't have, and this is a very common one. I don't have the right to complain. I have millions of dollars. I have homes in different places. I get to travel. I have a wonderful partner. Things are great. I have great kids. I don't have any, there's no reason for me to complain. But there's an emptiness that's still there. There's a hole in the soul, and that's this work. And so they come to me and they go, okay, I need to understand what this is. And I say, now here's the thing you want to understand. Because they'll often will say to me, am I going to lose my edge? Because I realize I built this edge. It's like the comedian who says, I don't know if I can give up the drugs or the alcohol because I don't know if it'll be funny without it. And what they all find is you're funnier. You're
Mhm.
funnier when you've done it. So yet you won't lose your edge. That's already trained your brain. You've already created the neural pathways of how to be enormously successful. You just haven't built the neural pathways of how to be deeply joyous, soulfully connected to your purpose.
Mhm.
This process takes you into that so that you're still achieving. And I always say to my clients, I'm not here to help you achieve more. You already know how to do that. But invariably you will.
Yeah.
You'll just achieve more, but you'll have more joy in it. And that's the key.
I've got this Seven Summit coming up here in Sun Valley in September, and this fall we rise. But the whole kind of thing, the avatar, the people that we're really trying to attract, and I'm saying this from personal experience, right?
Sure.
From what I went through. We've got 5 or 6 world-class speakers, but it's kind of for the guy or the girl plus 45 that has experienced all of life, likely has had success. They've climbed that mountain. I'm repeating a lot of the same things that you just came out of your
Sure.
mouth, right? And there's either a void because they've gone through a divorce or they got thrown out of their company or they could be that super successful person that everything on paper looks perfect, right? Just as you said, and you're standing up there and I'm saying about myself because I've been on that mountain, but
Yeah.
you're looking out the door, I'm looking down to my left and to my right and go, there's got to be more than this, right?
Right.
Because you start, I don't know what base I'm rounding. I don't know if it's second or third, right? But you can't like somebody who's 22 can't possibly like get any of this because one of the points that you made earlier was just like you have to experience life and you have to have some maturity, of having whatever's going on is not working anymore. It's preventing you that you now are reaching out, you're reading books or doing other things. So, anyways, it's interesting what you're saying because I think there's a whole lot of people out there just going to like I just climbed Mount Everest and like for me I actually did. And you're
Literally, yeah.
just, yeah, and you're just going, there's got to be more than this, right? And then how do you get to that next peak?
Yeah, and as I said, there's often this feeling of guilt about, if I've got all this, I don't have a right to complain.
Yeah.
And this is not complaining. This is your soul crying out for expression. And it's not going to get better with a new trophy. It's just not. And so it's taking that time. But here's the thing, you talked about the years and the experience and all
Hmm.
that. We call that resilience.
Hmm.
I get knocked on my ass and I get up. And I used to say, as you know, I fell off a mountain while free climbing. Not super high, but high enough, 120 feet, got
Yeah.
smashed to pieces.
Yeah.
Um, and the bottom line of it is up until 9 months after that fall, I would have said, I am resilient. That's a stupid statement. Now I'm saying it. You can take that as me judging you or whatever you want. I'm not judging you. It's a stupid statement built by a stubborn mind. And what it means is this: I get knocked down 7 times, I get up 8. You're an idiot. Get knocked down once, stay on your ass and work out why you're on your ass.
Yeah.
That's important. That's the lesson. You're not on your butt because just because you fell. It's like it's waking you up. You don't have to get smashed to pieces like I did. Maybe it's your wife saying, if this doesn't change, I'm out of here. Maybe it's your kids stop speaking to you. Maybe it's that standing on top of Success Mountain and going, something's not right. Maybe it's a diagnosis, but we default back to what we know. The brain is trained to go to the familiar. We will choose, and this is important, we will choose a known hell over an unknown heaven. That's not because there's something wrong with you. That's how your brain is wired for survival.
Hmm.
You will choose a known hell over an unknown heaven. So you go, I've got all these things on the outside that look great, but I'm feeling like hell on the inside. Well, what if you went in this other direction? Well, then I might lose all that. Yeah, but you're miserable.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
miserable, and you're making everybody around you miserable.
One of the things that I learned, this is that I come over to the Hillary Step. This is Mount Everest. So I come over to the Hillary Step. I'm out of my mind. I haven't eaten. I'm snowblind, and every single step I want to turn around, but I keep going because of the brain, trained and all this stuff. And I learned that one of my great strengths of all time is I never quit. And I learned that one of my great strengths that goes the other direction is I don't quit. And sometimes it's not about quitting, it's just about turning around and resetting yourself to come back and live for another day. Not maybe necessarily on that mountain, but you don't always have to get to the peak, right? That is not, like,
But Mark, you
again,
just said something that's so important,
yeah,
and so few people who are successful via resilience, right? I have never met a highly successful person. And I'm talking about, real top echelon. Never met one, not one. And I've been doing this for 40 years
yeah,
who hasn't got trauma.
yeah,
I haven't met one of them. We all look at them and go, oh, they got
yeah,
perfect life. They've
yeah,
all got massive amounts of trauma,
yeah,
and that trauma has driven them to be relentless.
yeah,
Why? Because they're moving away from trauma.
yeah,
So they don't stop.
yeah,
Because their conditioning in their emotional source code is, if I stop, I can get buried under this shit that's going on. So
yeah,
I'm just going to keep moving forward. And so we built this amazing power and armor, but it's destructive. your greatest gift, your greatest asset is also your greatest curse.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not you, Mark. That's us. It's what we do, particularly those of us who are big achievers. When I fell off the mountain and I'm like, got my jaw wide closed, I've
Yeah.
had 5 reconstructive surgeries, and people are coming to me and saying, "How you doing, Dov?" Right? This is in the first 9 months. I've got my jaw wide closed, and I go, "Oh, wait, I'm great. I'm
yeah.
coming back."
Yeah.
That's what I said. That's an idiot statement. It took me another 9 months to realize I'm not great. I'm darkly, deeply depressed. I'm just not letting anybody see it. And I don't want to come back to be what I was. I want to come back to be something that is an evolution of that.
Let me ask you this, and you may have just answered the question, but like I'm listening to your, let's call you Dove version 5.0 today. Let's just call it
Sure,
that. Okay.
sure.
So I'm trying to go back to version 1.0,
Mm-hmm,
right? And so I want to like, how did you fall into all this stuff? Because it's really complex,
mm-hmm,
and you have to have which I know you do because you've been like this with me. You're a great listener, so you're listening for key words, and you're listening, for key statements that lead again down this rabbit hole.
mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to go back to your original source code on
Sure.
what took you. You like, what was that in your life, and when was that in your life that,
Mm-hmm,
you decided like I need to take a right-hand turn and
mm-hmm.
figure this thing out?
Well, that big turn, as I said, was 9 months after I fell.
Yeah.
But to go back to the original code, I was born in abject poverty in northern England, surrounded by crime, violence, addiction, abuse of all kinds, including sexual. There was a lot of, it was pretty gritty to say the least. And my dad left when I was 7. He was a an abusive narcissist. Uh, and just a little shiny little button on that punched me in the face when I
Yeah.
was 9 months old.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
nice guy. And then when I was about just like he'd been gone for a little while, and I started having these dreams. That's what my mom called them. Um, and I would wake up and sit up and start saying things that she didn't understand. And she thought my head was going to start spinning and I was going to start speaking like this.
Yeah.
Right. So she shipped me off to the rabbis, and I began to study with these rabbis as a little kid. And so I learned about Kabbalah and spiritual nature of Judaism. By the time I was 10, I taught myself Pranayoga. By the time I was
Wait. Did you? I'm just I'm
no,
trying to transcend myself to when I'm a 9-year-old, and all I want to do be is in the backyard throwing the ball with my buddy. Okay.
yeah,
So as a 9-year-old, the way little 9-year-olds, their brain is all over the place and distracted. How could you like zero in on such a mature thing to be doing
yeah.
at such a
So
young age?
it's a good question because I was just this weird kid. Like so, other kids were watching cartoons.
Yeah.
I was lived in the UK. I was watching BBC. I was
Wow.
watching BBC Two. I was watching Shakespeare. I was watching documentaries. I was like, my mum used to say, it was weird that I was into all these things. And I was also severely dyslexic.
Hmm.
So I couldn't read. I had to learn in any way I could learn. But I had this fierce hunger, curiosity
Yeah.
to understand and learn. Fortunately, my mum's brother was only 9 years older than me, and he was kind of my educator, and I would learn things from him. So I wanted all this thing. The being put with the rabbis at 7 sort of awakened all that for me. And then by the time I'm 9 or 10, and my stepdad gives me this book on prana yoga, and I start to teach myself yoga and learning how to breathe, right, in certain ways, and like, oh, noticing these state changes. And then I became very interested at 10 years old. I became interested in politics because I walk in the living room, my mom's crying, and I'm not that that was an unusual thing, but she's crying watching the TV, and I don't know why. And I look at the TV, and there's someone on there I don't recognize, and she's pushing her glasses up as she's wiping away the tears. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "He's dead." And I said, "Who is?" And she said, "He is." And I'm listening, and then I hear, "I have a dream that one day And I was like, wow. And this resonant voice sat with me. And what was fascinating to me, even at 10, was how this black Christian man living in, to a 10-year-old on the other side of the world could so powerfully impact a Jewish poor woman living in a ghetto enough to make her cry. And that was, for me, was like, whoa, what is that? And I went away and asked my uncle about it, learned about Gandhi, learned about how he had influenced Martin Luther King. And then at 14, my mum walked into the living room, caught me watching TV, and I was watching a documentary that had no soundtrack except for music, right? And so it
Yeah,
was,
you are like a prodigy, is what you are. I mean, yeah, you're not like you're that is not normal, right? And I'm saying that as a compliment. I mean, that is not normal because you have a bunch of idiots like me that are just running around. I have no clue. I wasn't watching cartoons, but I was out throwing the ball, running the ball, playing with my friends, doing normal. I like
but you see,
a
that's what's beautiful about your childhood,
yeah,
right? So that's not missing something. Mine was missing something and trying to fill it. Yours was missing something too, and you were filling it in your way. We all have our own, again, anatomy of meaning and how
yeah.
we try to fill those gaps. That's what I was doing. I was trying to fill those gaps. At 14, I made a commitment to my mom. I'm leaving here. I'm 14. I'm dyslexic. I've got severe learning ability. I am weak. I've got severe anxiety. I've got massive stress. I've got walking around with PTSD from sexual abuse in my younger years. I mean, all of that plus all this craziness going on inside of my head. And I look at my mom and I'm going, I'm going to leave here. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
made a commitment. I'm leaving.
what
And
what
I
what
did.
I what I was really trying to say is I view you. Like when you start talking about my ability to make it into the NFL, these are my words. These are just the
Yeah.
facts. I'm in that
Yeah.
1%, right? Because of all the
Of
kids that are
course.
out there, right? And what I'm saying is that the choices that you made at such a young age, and I think the one thing that I'm really hanging on to more than anything, because I think this is where if there's one thing that I've been good at, and it was kind of led me from point to point on these different things I've been able to achieve, is this thing that you mentioned, which I call the power of curiosity. And that so many people just stay of what is versus asking the question why, right? And why? And you just go down that rabbit hole and you just keep coming. That's why I'm fascinated with this conversation because I don't know anything you're talking about, but I'm so fascinated on like how this whole thing came. And now I'm discovering that you were in your own, in my words, this 1% of unique kids that were almost forced into having this certain thing, but you had an acumen and a brain power, another to actually understand it and receive it in a way that maybe it could fuel you somewhere down the road. It's really interesting.
But it was built on insecurity.
Yeah, I get all that. I mean, I get all that, but still, there's a lot of insecure kids that were on the playground with me throwing a ball, not watching a
Sure.
documentary with no words, right?
Yeah.
So
But
it's just you're just I'm trying to I'm
yeah,
this is kind of a backhanded compliment of saying you're unique in that
thank you.
way, and it's really interesting to me. And I can see now where there's this tie, this connection of when you're 8, 9 years old, growing up in a brutal environment and that you were drawn to something that could feed you more than what you probably weren't getting, which then led you to where you sit today.
Well, you probably did things, you know, that seemed kind of crazy for those around you. And by that, I mean, you did things that led you on a path to the NFL, that
Yeah.
led you on a path to climbing Everest, that led you on a path to be, in the top 0%, 0.1% of what you do. That was what I was doing. And for me, I will say, yes, it was insecurity, but that insecurity led me on the journeys that it led me on because this is my religion, curiosity.
Yeah.
My religion is curiosity.
Yeah.
And I made that commitment within myself was to stay curious about all things at all times. And my most profound question to myself all the time is, what if this is not true?
Hmm.
And that's what changed me is what if this is not true? It's the work that I do with everybody is what if this is not true? Who are you? Oh, I'm Mark Pattison. Okay. What if that's not true? Well, of course it's true. It's been my name all my life.
Yeah.
No, that's your name. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what do you mean? Well, what if it's not true? Right? And that willingness to go to that depth with something. And you know this when you're training somebody, let's say as a climber, right? I can't do that. They're looking at it like, you want me?
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. How do I do it? This step, then that one, then that one. Then you train your brain to get used to that. Oh, so suddenly it's not true. You see, here's what I want everybody to consider for a minute. Just look at your life. I don't care what age you are. And as you're watching us, listening to us, just take a moment, look at your life. And now what I want you to do is I want you to look back to when you were a kid and ask that kid how that kid sees you living today. You're living the impossible.
Hmm.
Your life is impossible. It's like that 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and saying, "Oh, this. Hey, I'm Mark. I'm from the future. I've climbed Everest. I've climbed summits. I've been in the NFL." That kid's like, "What? Come on, you're kidding, right? It's not real."
Yeah.
How do you do it? Through an innate, deep, driving curiosity. Now apply that to self. We've applied it to outcomes. Now apply it to self and watch yourself reach a different Everest, one that's soulful.
If anybody goes to my website, it's mentioned before, Mark Pattison, NFL.com. I actually just changed it to yesterday, making the impossible possible. It's interesting that you say that, because that really, to me, that sums up my life. I'm just like, I grew up, both my parents were teachers. They're amazing. They were, my dad passed away, but my mom's still with us. But I mean, I didn't grow up with means, so to speak. I felt like I got to do everything back in the day because I didn't know any different, right? And I think you said it best, is really to so much of about our brain capacity is limiting beliefs on what we can do. And that's so much of what I try to talk about, which is just like, you gotta say, why not me? Why can't I be that one person that does this, become an astronaut or whatever it is, that you like, there's nobody that says you can't, but so many times it's that self-doubt that creeps in, and the insecurity on, well, I could never do that because blah, 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 blah. And like, why not? Why can't you?
Yeah, but again, it's not a belief. It's below the belief, which is the identity.
Yeah, I
And
get
the
that.
identity
Yeah.
you built, just to be clear, you built it for damn good reason. You didn't build it. So even though you see it as limiting and it's not letting you do X or Y, it your brain is not your brain has no concept of good or bad, happy or sad or any of the things. It works out very simply. Survive, don't survive.
Hmm.
That's it. Your identity was built and your dysfunctional behaviors were built to help you survive. Thank goodness. Thank your brain for that. That's amazing. Those things need to be updated. They were completely appropriate when you were 0 to maybe even 14, but they're no longer appropriate. You're not living that life, but your brain is on automatic as if it is.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge we got to give ourselves. It's not just like, oh, I can believe in myself. No, you have to go to the identity, change the identity. The belief is automatic. Oh, well, this doesn't match my identity anymore. It's not who I am.
Amazing stuff. You talked earlier about, and again, you're doing this at an age when, yeah, like again, you're a prodigy, so you're unique. But you're talking about you went off and you're studying with these rabbis, and you're also doing meditation, or well, you called it yoga, which is a
Mhm.
form of meditation,
Pranayoga, which is
right?
breath yoga.
Yeah. And so, as you know, climbing mountains so much is about breathing and learning how to breathe, and you're trying to maximize oxygen, especially on a big mountain like Mount Everest, where you've got a third less oxygen when you're up there, and it can have, consequential effects. I had
Hmm.
two dead guys. I slept one next to one at Camp 4, and I stepped over my tent mate from Antarctica near the top. And the point is that, so much of my discovery, first of all, it didn't come till 50. I'm 64 now. It didn't come till 50. So the first 50 years I was living in the dark, more or less, right? Just
Right.
going about my thing. And but the gift has been that I've moved to this woodsy, very Vancouver, BC like, but small, teeny tiny Sun Valley, Idaho. And by going out and being in nature, and a lot of times, especially on these rope teams where you're spread 50 feet apart, just because of the way, if there's danger and somebody falls in a crevasse, you can arrest them and he'll pull them out. But it's hour after hour after hour of just, there's no music, no cell phones work. And it's just thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and the power of curiosity and how do you do this and why did I do that and every stupid thought you could ever possibly imagine. But that peace and that quietness for me has had a huge healing effect in many different ways and also giving me a lot of creative ideas on, maybe I didn't think about it that way, right? So, anyways, it's been a blessing. I'm saying, like, you did that when you were 8, and it only took me like 50 years after that to figure that out, right? On a type of breathing for me being in the mountains and climbing, and much of that I do by myself. And that
I
solitude's really
think you might
helped.
be giving me a bit more credit than I'm due, because, like I said, I was resilient, which meant stubborn, and so I did a lot of stuff because I was just like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get through this, and and as I always say, I fell in June 1990. That was my fourth fall. It wasn't my first. Why? Because I'm a bit thick.
Oh,
The first fall was seven. Fell 70 miles down a shale, 70 feet down a shale mountain in Western Australia, and that should have been enough,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
was the first one. That should have woke me up. But again, that focused mindset, which was so powerful and so good and got me to travel the world and got me to study with different spiritual masters, got me to study all the different things I studied and make me learn when I couldn't learn and make me write books when I can't write and all those things. It was fantastic. But it was also my greatest hindrance because it kept making me say, just drive through this. And you have to get to a point where you need the silence. You need the stop, as you said, to breathe and go, what if this is not true?
Yeah.
At a deep level, what if this is not true? And so the question I ask people to ask themselves is, what part of you is still living like you're in your childhood? Not the joy of your childhood, but living, dealing with whatever the trauma of your childhood was. Well, I had a great childhood. My parents were good. Yeah, okay. Whatever you say, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not telling you your parents were bad. I'm telling you there was things in your childhood you didn't get. Not because your parents were bad, it's just because of the way it is. So you look at that and you say, what is it that I needed that I couldn't get or couldn't get enough of? And how am I living as if that's still true?
Hmm.
You sit with that. Honestly, sit with that. You've just done 10 years of therapy. If you can sit with that. But most
You,
people can sit with that for 3 seconds and then they get nervous and they go say, oh, I'll go do something.
you just cost me another 60 trips up and down the mountain thing I have to go do now. All right, let me ask you this question. Where you and I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, this is so fascinating. I mean, it's just I would love to have a beer with you sometime and just get even deeper. Where can people find you?
Thank you for asking, Mark. I appreciate it. You can find me at dovbaron.com, DOVBARON.com. You can actually write to me, dov at dovbaron.com. Yes, I am insane. I give out my email address. And the reason for it is very simple. I'm here on the planet to serve. Giving you information is great. I want to know what you're going to do with it. So write to me, tell me what you got out of this and what you're going to do with it. Moreover, I would ask you to write to Mark and tell him what you got out of not just this episode, but any of his episodes. The guy puts the time, the energy, the effort in to bring you this podcast, to bring people on who you would have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to be with, and you get to have this because he puts the effort into that. So appreciate Mark. Go to Apple or wherever it is, write a review, subscribe, do those kinds of things for him to boost it because it's a one-way street otherwise. And that's not the world we want to live in. We want to live in a world of reciprocity and caring and love. So let him know. You can write to me at Dov at Dov Baron. You can find my podcast, The Dov Baron Show, there. You can also find my newsletter there. It's on I write for LinkedIn every Tuesday, and I write on my own podcast, on my own website rather, every Thursday on Curious Chronicles. If you type in Dov Baron, you won't find another one, and you won't be able to get through everything that's there.
Love that. Love that. He is the one, the only Dov Baron. Thank you so much for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Right on.